Hey, everyone. So before we get this week's episode of Lowlights started, Gavin and I have been talking about this. We just wanted to jump on very quickly. By now you probably know that there was now the second attack on Jewish people at an event in America. Of course, there was a tragic murder of two people in Washington, D.C. last week. And then this week, there was an attack on a group of people in Boulder, Colorado. And Gevin and I have talked a lot about this. We want this podcast to be a place where you can get away from the day-to-day tragedies of the world. These are certainly not the only two tragedies that are occurring in the world. There is a lot of pain and there's a lot of heartbreak and there's a lot of loss in the United States, in Israel, in Gaza, and in many other places around the world. And so Gevin and I want you to know that it's okay if you're struggling. It's okay if you're scared. It's okay if you're upset. There are resources to help you with that. We've provided them for prior episodes. Ask for help. Tell people that you're not doing okay if you need to. And then just know that as well, you can reach out to us. We're on social media. You know how to find us. Reach out to us. Let us know if you need to talk or if you need some help, and get the help that you need, and sending our thoughts to everybody, and hoping for a world in which people don't have to experience loss, heartbreak, and violence. And with that, Gevin.
Well said, Dave. Thank you for that.
Of course.
I'm Gevin.
And I'm Dave.
And welcome to episode 9 of Lowlights. So today we're going to talk to Chris Carr, retired NFL player who had a terrific career as both a cornerback and a kick returner. And he actually still holds the record for the Raiders in their all-time return yards category. But before we get into our interview, we're going to get into some NBA and NHL highlights. And we're also going to play a little game as well.
Yeah.
Of course. So let's get into it. The finals are set, obviously, in the NBA and the NHL.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, I was actually at a couple bars in New York last night watching Game 6 of Pacers Knicks, and let me tell you, New Yorkers are not doing okay. They're not doing okay. But alas, they're a resilient bunch.
My heart breaks for them, Gavin. You know, as somebody pointed out on social media, the Knicks, I'm excited to attend the banner raising. Beat the injured Celtics in round 2. I can't wait for the Knicks to have that parade.
Oh,
no, I feel bad. I like Knicks fans. I know a number of Knicks fans in my life. I feel bad. Great series. I thought that the Pacers would win that series. As you know, we talked about this before the series started. So I'm not entirely surprised, but game 1 of that series was an all-time classic. That Pacers comeback, and and congrats to them. Pacers Thunder going to be an interesting, not the series that I think most people expected going into the year.
Yeah,
but
Dave, I love how you're like, I can't be anti-Knicks. I have a bunch of Knicks fan friends.
Well, let's just say I'm happy with how this played out. And who do you have, by the way? Who do you have in the finals?
Okay, it's a good question. I think the Thunder have been the best team in the NBA, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. So I'm going with the Thunder, probably in either 5 or 6 games. I think the Pacers are a fun team to watch. They've got a star in Tyrese Halliburton, but also a pretty complete starting 5 as well. So, I'm looking for them to not go down without a fight. That's why I think it could drag on to 6 games. But ultimately, I think the Thunder are going to pull this one out. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Thunder have been the best team all year. And it's when the playoffs started, my assumption, I even told, and I have the receipts to prove this. I said to a lot of people, to a Lakers fan, to a Cavs fan, to other Celtics fans, like, I think that this is the Thunder year.
I think it's their year.
And so whenever we were talking about, they were like, "Oh, is it going to be a Celtics-Lakers final?" I was like, "No, I don't think so. I think it's going to be the Thunder, and it's going to be hard for anybody to beat them." But I will say, if the Pacers can do what they did against the Knicks and steal one of the first 2 games in OKC, I think that throughout the playoffs they've been underrated. I picked them against the Knicks when they were the underdog. I'm not counting them out. Siakam, Halliburton. I mean, that team is loaded.
Eastern Conference Finals MVP Siakam.
Yeah, that team is loaded. Carlisle's a great coach, and I just think, like, if they get out and run and play the brand of basketball they've been playing at the way that they did against the Knicks and the Celtics, or excuse me, against the Knicks and the Cavs, I just think like that team is going to be hard to stop. My head says, Thunder probably in 5, but my heart says don't count out Pacers in 7 as a possibility.
Well, I can tell you, last week I mentioned once a Hoosier, always a Hoosier. This Pacers fan base is a rowdy bunch. And they are fired up right now, whether you're listening to Pat McAfee or whoever it is. They are fired up for this series. And I think in a lot of ways, I know you said you think it's the Thunder's year. I think a lot of Pacers fans feel like this is the Pacers
their year. It definitely could be.
It's their year.
It could be.
So, I think the fan base really does play a lot into how that team plays. I think we've seen that, just how rowdy and rambunctious Pacers fans have been. I think the team on the court has been responding to that. So that's why I think this could go either way. While I do think the Thunder will win this series, the Pacers are going to make it pretty damn close.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah.
And I got my bet. I got my bet. Pacers over Thunder.
You
Remember
did
from last week.
That's right. Yep.
Let's see how that goes. That's
right. Yeah. And of course, Dave, in the NHL, got the Stanley Cup Finals starting up. The defending champion Florida Panthers going up against the Edmonton Oilers, led by the dynamic Connor McDavid. This would be a huge win for Canada if the Oilers if the Oilers win this. So I don't know about you, but I'm rooting for the Panthers because I'm an American. So
I think honestly, what I'm rooting for, like playoff hockey, especially in like close games and in overtimes, is so great that's really what I'm rooting for, is a close series. Like Game 7, Panthers Oilers was so great last year. The storyline of Canada having had that Stanley Cup drought since the early '90s, '93, I think. Versus the repeating champions in Florida with Brad Marchand, who's a personal favorite because he was a Bruin for so long. I think it's just such a great storyline for the NHL, and I would just love to see this series go 6 or 7 games, have those games go into overtime, have it be like the playoff hockey that we love. And so that's what I'm rooting for, really, more than like either of the teams, because ultimately, I guess I kind of would almost prefer the Oilers because I root against Florida sports pretty much in everything. So
you hear that, everyone?
I'll just put that out there.
Anti-American Dave over here. Although maybe it won't even matter because Canada's about to be our 51st state anyway.
Oh my goodness gracious! That's all I have to say about that.
Well, let's talk about baseball then.
All right, let's go to baseball. Thank you. So,
although I knowing what you're about to talk about, I'm actually not sure if I want you to talk about baseball.
Well, Gevin, as you may be aware, our baseball teams played each other over the weekend.
I haven't heard.
The Boston Red Sox and the Atlanta Braves, they had a series over the weekend. And which of us took 2 of those 3 games, Gevin?
Well, technically, because we used to one time be the Boston Braves, I guess we both won.
It is so funny. I heard, so a lot of people don't know this, but Nickerson Field at Boston University at BU.
At BU, yeah.
Right off Comm Ave, for those who know, outside Kenmore Square. It's still a baseball stadium. It used to be the home of the Boston Braves. Until they moved to Milwaukee and then eventually to Atlanta. And it's funny, like there's these rivalry weekends in Major League Baseball now, and they have the Red Sox and Braves as rivals for those, because for a lot of them it's like Mets and Yankees. Okay, that makes sense. It's a Subway Series, or like Orioles and Phillies. Okay, that makes sense. They're right next to each other. But Braves and Red Sox, it's like nobody under the age of 75 or 80 even remembers when that was a going concern, and there were 2 teams in Boston at this point. And so it just feels a little silly because the Atlanta Braves have nothing to do with the Boston Red Sox. There's just no rivalry there.
I know what you're talking about. I'm just glad that both our teams won this weekend.
Oh my goodness. But
both our cities can celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
Braves fans and Boston fans.
Look, it's been a rough season for both organizations. But I will say, people say I'm being too positive about the Red Sox. They're under 500 right now. But this happens every year. I mean, what I love about baseball is that it's there for you in good weeks and bad weeks throughout. It's just the sound. It's the soundtrack to my summer. Like
for better or for worse,
for better or worse. And as people say, there's an expression in baseball like, your winning streak or your losing streak is only as strong as the next day's starting pitcher, because it doesn't matter if you lose by 10 runs on Saturday. The game starts the next day on Sunday, 0-0. And I just love that about baseball. And I feel like in a 162 game season, so many Red Sox fans are rushing, and Braves fans too, are rushing to write off the season after 2 months and say, oh, well, we're not in first place after 2 months. And the reality is we have no idea how the rest of the season is going to go. We have no idea how the team is going to play.
Tell that to some Rockies fans.
Oh my goodness. So that's the other story from Major League Baseball. So the Rockies, so we're recording this, Sunday. The Rockies have just set the record. So they have started their season, Gevin. 9-50. 9-50.
Have they fired anyone yet?
They fired their head coach, which like their manager, which for the record, oh, surprise, surprise. It turns out that firing the manager didn't all of a sudden fill that roster with good players. And the Rockies, I mean, Gevin, it is crazy. Like, I was looking at the stats, and I'm not going to bore our listeners by going through all of these, but like, at the moment, I think the leader on the Rockies for home runs hit has something like 4 home runs. So he's on pace to hit their leading home run hitter this year. And this is for the Rockies, who play in Coors Field, which is a mile high, where home runs are the most likely to be hit in baseball.
Right.
Their leading home run hitter this year at the moment has, 8 home runs? I mean,
that's cute.
So bad, Gevin. It is like, that means that guy's on pace to, hit like 24 home runs and lead the Rockies in home runs.
So let me just ask you, I mean, all the guys on the Rockies roster are bona fide professional baseball players.
Yeah.
Play at the highest level of baseball. So what is it? Are these just the worst players of MLB players? There are a lot of injuries. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a couple things. But baseball's, you play 162 games, right?
Yeah.
And so that means that it's not like basketball where, like, if you have like 1 or 2 good players, you can just be good night in and night out because you've got those guys.
Right.
Like in Major League Baseball, like you have to start you can only start a starting pitcher generally. They need 4 days of rest between starts. So, and like, you're starting 9 guys in your lineup, and you need bench players as well. So the problem with baseball is, like, even if you have a couple good players, you need a lot. You need 25, 26 guys on a Major League roster to be solid players.
True. That's true.
If you don't have, like, I feel like depth in Major League Baseball matters so much. It's kind of like the NFL. But like the thing is, if you have a good quarterback in the NFL, you can be solid.
Definitely.
Pretty much no matter who else you have on your team. I mean, you gotta have like NFL caliber players, but like a good quarterback and a couple good other players can make an NFL team somewhat decent. Whereas like in baseball, it's just so hard to do that. And the Rockies, it's just a combination of like years, I would say, of mismanagement, and years of bad decisions, years of contracts and signing players
their
who
owners
deserve that.
A lot of hot water right now.
It is wild, Gevin. That
the other thing too is the MLB doesn't have a salary cap. I mean, how much do you think that affects things? Where there's just the competition is not fair for talent, and then therefore you've got these loaded teams. Like I would venture to say the Dodgers would be one of those, maybe the Yankees too.
The Yankees,
where Mets. You don't have the same level of competitive equity as you might in a sport like the NFL, for example, where there is a salary cap. So one team can't just stack their team with superstars.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think everything that you're saying is true, but it takes a special combination of circumstances. Like last year, the Chicago White Sox set the record for the most losses in the season, and the Chicago White Sox last year were the worst team in baseball history. And now, 1 year later, we have the Colorado Rockies who are on pace to be even worse. And it really takes a special combination of bad luck, of some injuries, and really just an accumulation of just terrible choices by the management. There's a lot of, again, I won't go into all of it, but that team has been really resistant to advanced analytics. That team has been really resistant to a lot of the modern advances in in approaches to baseball and using statistics to help inform which players they sign and which players they extend and what value they get from them. And it's a real cautionary tale. I'm sorry for Rockies fans, because this is just, I mean, this is they're on pace to be one of the worst professional sports teams in American professional sports history. I mean, up there with like the.
So we're talking like the Lions.
Yeah,
16 Lions.
Exactly, the 0-16 Lions. The I think the 1972, 73, 76ers. They won 9 games in an NBA season, something like that. Yeah, no, I mean they're up there. These Rockies are in that list. And
talk about low light.
That is a low light. But anyway, so that's baseball. Keep you posted.
Yeah, we will. Okay, so should we get into our game, Dave?
Let's do it.
All right, so we got a fun game today. It actually goes back to something that I saw on Twitter, and I actually sent this to you over the weekend. But our good friend Dove, I feel like we're talking about Dove every week. Maybe we should have Dove on this podcast at a certain point.
Dove, come on,
exactly. We could. I think we'd have a great time with Dove. So what he posted on Twitter was this. The caption was simple. He said, "Build the perfect lineup with $15." And below the caption, there was a photo, and it was sort of like a grid. And it had a starting. So essentially, it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 25 NFL players, 5 at each of the starting 5 positions on the offensive side of the ball.
Oh, I've seen these.
And in a given position, so let's take the quarterback position for example. Dove has for you a $1 option, a $2 option, a $3 option, a $4 option, and a $5 option, and it's that for every position. And so your challenge, Dave, is to, like I said, build your dream lineup, starting offensive lineup, quarterback, running back, 2 receivers, tight end, with a budget of only $15. There's going to be a catch. So if you just go on Twitter right now, you can see all the players at your disposal, all the players that you can spend your $15 on to assemble your team.
Oh, but you're not going to give me that price.
No. Oh, you know me too well, Dave. I'm not going to give you that. Absolutely not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go position by position. I'm going to start with the quarterback position. I'm going to tell you who your options are from $5 down to $1. But you're not going to know who your options are for the other position. So if you spend $5, for example, at the quarterback position, you only have $10 for your 4 remaining positions.
Got it.
So there's a little bit of strategy involved here. There's a little bit of guesswork, but I think you're up to the task.
Hit me.
Are you?
Hit me. Let's go.
All right. So let's start with the quarterback position. Here are your options. Josh Allen, $5. Lamar Jackson, $4. Patrick Mahomes, $3. Jalen Hurts, $2.
That's a bargain.
You want to hear an even bigger bargain? Joe Burrow, $1.
Oh,
yes.
I thought you were going to say Pro Bowl quarterback Drake May.
No, he doesn't go into negatives. Doesn't go into negatives. You could take Drake May. You'd actually save. You'd save money. You'd have some extra room for the other position. So
look, I mean, I know that Jalen Hurts is the defending Super Bowl champion QB, so that's tempting.
Yep.
Josh Allen obviously is tempting. I'm going to go Joe Cool. I'm going to go Joe Burrow for $1.
I mean, yeah.
That is a bargain. I'll take Joe Burrow all day. 5,000, almost 5,000 yards, over 40 touchdowns last year.
Right.
I'm comfortable with him picking him for $1.
It's a good choice. You got $14 left, so we're going to move on to the running back position now. You can guess. You can guess who's going for $5. Saquon, of course.
Of course.
$4, Derrick Henry.
Okay.
$3, Jahmyr Gibbs. $2, Josh Jacobs, and $1, Bijan. That's a huge discount too, I might add.
It's a huge discount for Bijan on the Falcons.
So you got $14 left.
I think I'm going to spend money here. I'm going to take Derrick Henry. I want a team where once we're within the 10-yard line, it's over. Like, automatic, we're scoring. I'll take Derrick Henry. Good luck. Good luck to the teams trying to stop us.
Okay, so I'm doing this math in my head because I don't have a pen with me. So that's $1, $4, $5. You got $10 left. Okay. Yep. You ready to move on to your wide receiver 1 position?
Hit me.
All right. So $5, Jamar Chase. $4, Puka Nacua. $3, Brian Thomas. $2, CeeDee Lamb. And $1. They keep undervaluing these Falcons players, but Drake London for one.
London?
Yeah, Drake London.
I mean, got $10 left.
Uh-huh.
It's going to limit me, but I'm going to have to go chase Jamar Chase for $5. I just feel I want to keep him and Burr together. Keep those LSU guys together.
That chemistry going back to LSU. Exactly. Yep.
Right. Keep that chemistry together. I feel like that's a solid base. I'm liking this team a lot so far. I'm feeling very good about this. All right.
So you got $5 left.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the wide receiver 2 position here.
Okay.
All right. So for $5, Justin Jefferson.
Okay. Can't take him. Yep.
Right. Well, you can if you want to go without a tight end, if you're that confident in your roster to this point.
True.
Okay. $4, Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Ooh.
Yeah. $3, Malik Neighbors. $2, Terry McLaurin. $1, Ladd McConkey.
Neighbors over Scary Terry is an interesting
ranking
because I feel like Neighbors was a rookie last year with the Giants. He's got a lot of talent, but all right, I'm gonna this is gonna lock me into the lowest left, and I know I'm gonna go with Amon-Ra St. Brown for $4. I feel
think that's fair. So you have absolutely no choice for the tight end, but I'll still give him to you anyway.
Yeah, still give him to me.
Oh, I could just tell you who you got, but all right, we'll go through the whole thing. So Brock Bowers for $5, Travis Kelce for $4.
Oh,
George Kittle for $3. I know.
Travis Kelce now.
I know.
Overvalued.
I agree. He should be down at $1. You should have Kelce on your team, honestly. And Taylor Swift too. Kittle for $3. Trey McBride for $2, and Sam Laporta for $1.
Oh, I love this.
So rounding out your team is Sam Laporta. So congratulations.
Can I have this team? Can we put these players on the Patriots, Gevin? Oh, come on now. That's a great team.
I know.
Okay. All right. Good,
I know.
Good game. I feel very good about it.
Good game.
Yeah.
You feel good?
Mm-hmm. I feel great.
Who do you think would win between the Pats starting offense and, well, I mean, it's only going to go head to head, but like the Pats starting offense and this dream team starting offense?
Well, do they have the Patriots offensive line?
No.
Look, Pro Bowl quarterback Drake May, got to pick him every time. Gevin. It's not fair. It's not fair to the All-Star team.
When you're taking Drake May, you've got like $14 more left.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Or 15, more like 15.
Yeah. All right, but
okay. Fun game,
and
good highlights. Yeah,
I know that you wanted to introduce our guest this week, and I got to say, Gevin, our guest this week, like, I'm not sure if everybody listening remembers Chris Carr from his time in the NFL, but I would say, he's up there with just the fascinating guests that we've had on Lowlights. I think he's just such an incredible story. So So you go ahead, tell people.
I agree, and my favorite Chris Carr highlight. So Chris Carr is the man who picked off Tom Brady in the 2009 AFC wildcard game. Just kidding. Just kidding. I mean, it's true, but Chris Carr is a retired, like I said, cornerback and kick returner. He is from Reno, Nevada, played college ball at Boise State, and went undrafted in 2005, playing with the Raiders for a few seasons. And then had stints with the Titans, had an amazing few years with the Ravens, a brief playing career with the Vikings, and then rounded out his career with the Chargers and the Saints. And after retiring, he had just a prolific career on the field. And we're going to get into some really cool stories with Chris from his time playing in the NFL, but has made a tremendous impact since retiring from football as well. He's currently in the DC area working as an immigration attorney, a job that at this moment in time especially is really so crucial. So this is going to be, like Dave said, just an awesome conversation, talk a lot of ball, but also talk about what motivates him and what drives him off the field as well. So we hope you enjoy this interview with Chris. We're probably not going to hop on with the Lowlights for this week. Our interview with Chris goes a little longer, and I think our interview is better because of that. But we'll be sure to be with you guys next week. So thank you. Enjoy the interview, and we will talk to you next week. We're back with this week's guest, retired NFL cornerback and kick returner, Chris Carr. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Course. So I want us to start where it all started for you, which was in Reno, Nevada. You had this amazing high school career playing running back and defensive back in McQueen High School. So maybe you could just tell us the story of those early years of your football career. What were they like? I mean, what made you want to start playing football in the first place? How did you choose what positions to play? And, did you feel like during that time that you were destined for a college football playing career and then the NFL?
Oh, definitely not. Definitely not. I remember kids would say things like, "Oh, you're going to be in the NFL one day."
Uh-huh.
I was really good at basketball too when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
Before everyone didn't know that I wasn't going to be 6'6", But yeah, everyone would say things to me, but in my mind, nobody in Reno had ever made it. Like nobody in Reno had ever even played like major college football. And my sister, I grew up with two sisters and my mother, in Reno. Most of our family was in California. But all my sister's friends were the athletes I looked up to because she knew like the best athletes in Nevada. And some of them went to UNLV, some of them went to Nevada Reno, but nobody had like success. So like in my eyes, looking up to them, it was like, oh, this isn't like a thing that's going to happen. But it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a sense because my own focus was just get better, just get as good as possible, right? And so I didn't have this pressure like, hey, if I don't do this, because like that's just a dream that's not going to happen. My thing was just get better. And when I was a child, my mom, she put me in karate. I was doing that when I was younger, like 5, 6 years old. But then one day the sensei fought all the black belts and like beat them up, like
What?
out of all of them. And they're all like crying and bloody. And that's like the only memory I have like from when I'm 6. I remember there was this one
kid.
This guy's still teaching? Or
I had no clue what happened after that. Played shit afterwards. But I just remember the only one that wasn't crying was this one girl, and she was like bloodied and she was like very tough. And I just remember looking at her, I was like, I'm not doing that because no matter how good I get, I'm gonna have to fight him. I went home. I told my mom, and she's like, all right, well, maybe you could try football. And I think with my mom, it was single parent. She wanted me to be engaged in some activities. And so my first year, I actually played center. I started playing tackle football when I was 8 years old. I was telling my kids there was no flag football then. It was like you played tackle football or that. But my first year wasn't good at all. My mom, I wanted to quit, but she was like, "Oh, I'll just play again." And they put me at running back, and the rest is history, sort of. And I mean, obviously, I think I was more talented than everyone, because I was an NFL talent in Nevada where there was no NFL talent. But I did go to a perennial powerhouse, high school football program in high school. McQueen High School, there were always state championship games, state champions or runner-up every year. And so I was very fortunate to go there because a lot of the values that I had that were instilled in me were strengthened there. And also I could bring those to Boise State in my NFL career later on. But my focus was just get as good as possible. And unfortunately, I got a scholarship offer to Boise State, and that's how it started.
Wow. I mean, that's just incredible. Can you talk a little bit more about your mom and the impact that your mom has had on you and had on you when you were growing up? I mean, I lost my dad when I was young. And so for me too, my mom is my everything. And I have a younger sister. And so I have the sole male energy in the household. And it sounds like that was the same for you. But I know what it's like to be raised by just a strong woman. And it sounds like that was the case for you. So can you just tell us a little bit more about your mom and what she means to you?
Yeah, I mean, it was very difficult in a sense because we didn't have a lot, right? A lot of times she worked 2 jobs. And it was my older sister. She was 6 years older than me. Like she would be like the babysitter, and she was like an aunt figure. It's my other older sister, Stacy, and I, who we shared a room. But through her hard work, I never went without. I was never hungry. And I appreciated things. And all my shoes are from Payless, more or less. I don't even know what Payless is. I don't even know what that's.
Yeah, no, we know.
But yeah, I had a happy childhood.
Yeah.
Luckily, it was a lower caste neighborhood, but we didn't have any violence in my neighborhood, really. But yeah, seeing her as an example when it came to like taking care of business, I could tell that she was good with money. She didn't go off and spend things that she couldn't afford. And it was like an appreciation of things because I never like, oh, I wish we could do this or go on vacation or do all these things. But like, no, it's like I have my food, I have family here, and I get to go outside and play basketball and play with my friends. And so I think that example, I think leading by example, was very, I mean, I used to remember thinking like, oh, if I ever lost my mom, like, and it was almost like I would panic, like thinking about that because like that's how attached I was to her and that's how much she meant to me. She's an incredible person. My parents divorced when I was younger, and she couldn't move back to Oakland where my sisters were born. But it was more of a situation in which she's like, well, it's a lower cost of living here in Reno, which is 3 hours away from where she grew up, and it's a much safer environment. And for her to do that showed so much strength, and also not bringing a bunch of guys in the house, right? And a lot of times, a lot of single parents have that pressure, like, hey, they have to have this father in the house with them. Then a lot of times they put up with behaviors that are abusive and are not conducive to raising a healthy children. And she had those pressures, but she never. I think there probably were some men that wanted to come in the house, but she really prevented that and made it a healthy environment for us. So I think her example was great for me. And I'll also too, my sisters had different interests, and so it was like it was just me when it came to basketball and to football. So in a sense, I really had to try to think about these stuff on my own and work hard on my own and kind of be independent. I think that helped me out greatly, especially when I was in the NFL, when it was you're undrafted free agent, you're going to have to figure out a lot of things by yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So let's fast forward a little bit to Boise State, and you went off to college to play football there, just powerhouse franchise. Actually, where a couple of my cousins went to college as well. But I'm sure you took a piece of your mom, your community, your family with you to play college ball. What was the transition like? I actually heard you talk one time about the transition. You mentioned that initially when you were playing at Boise State, you weren't really viewed as a starter per se. So I'm curious how you went about proving those people wrong and convincing them and maybe even convincing yourself that you were good enough.
Yeah, it was at McQueen, so I have to go back to high school to paint the picture, the broader context, everything. So at McQueen, I mostly played running back. I played a little bit of safety. But defensive wise, it wasn't like, oh, they're teaching you how to backpedal, to run, how to read routes, how to read stems, how to read splits. Like it was pretty much like, no, we're going to control up front, we're going to block and tackle well, and we're going to run the same plays, and we're just going to be better disciplined, better conditioned, everyone to win, tougher than everyone. And so I had never really backpedaled to have to really cover people.
Yeah.
And the base defense for Boise State at the time was man-to-man, no blitz. Like if they came out in a 21 personnel and you have an X and Y receiver, it was the corners are man-to-man. The strong safety is man-to-man on tight end.
So you have to be able to backpedal. Those mechanics have to be there.
Yeah, and so like
otherwise those receivers are going right past you.
And that was our base.
Yeah.
It was called the Sarah scheme. Our base scheme was you play man-to-man.
Yeah.
And so when I got there, I think one of the things, like when it comes to sports, I was never delusional. I could really look at myself and assess my abilities, like honestly. And I looked, I was like, I'm the worst corner on the team. I have the worst technique. I cannot backpedal. I can't do this. But I did have some confidence that I knew I was athletic enough.
Yeah.
There was some doubt coming into Boise State because at that time I was like, nobody in Nevada has ever done anything. And I knew that I was playing some of the best players from Arizona, California. And so there's a little trepidation, like, am I going to be able to compete with them?
Yeah.
But when I got there, I felt like athletically, I was like, oh, I'm more athletic than I thought I actually was previously. But it took 2 years, I would say, to really learn how to like backpedal, to really learn how to have good technique.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, the fundamentals. And the one thing that another blessing in disguise going to Boise State is that I think some cornerbacks in college, let's say if they go to Georgia, South Carolina, you have a bunch of dogs up front. They're going to get after the quarterback. You're going to play too, right? So you have less incentive to really your skills. Whereas like at Boise State, you had no choice. And there was a lot of players that got frustrated, like after a year, like I'm just going to do whatever feels comfortable. If I make a play, I make a play. But my thing was like, I knew what the standard was. I knew what good technique looked like. It was like, you're going to get there eventually. And so after 2 years, I feel like I went from by far the worst technique to, I think, the best technique on the team. And even in the NFL, when it comes to like breaking and turning on a dime and quickly with good technique, there was only probably a handful of players that I would say that had just as good as technique as I had. But it was going the hard route, which was very difficult because when you go from being the best in high school, then you go on and people are like laughing at you, like you go on one-on-one drills. Right. It's like, okay.
You got the wax on, wax off.
Yeah.
And so that was a big life lesson too, because it just shows like you just need to stick with it. And like you might not ever get there, but at least like having that mentality of like, I'm going to work towards this goal and I'm not going to give up on it.
Yeah.
Because that was the only way I would have had good technique. Because if I would have given up after a couple months or a year, I would have been a mediocre player. Maybe towards the latter part of my career, I would have been a kick returner, punt returner only, and had some success. But as far as developing the skills that I needed to have to succeed in the NFL, I needed to go the long route. But yeah, it was very eye-opening and very frustrating those first 2 years at Boise State. And that's it.
Yeah, well, and it's and that's actually where I wanted to go next, Chris, because you ended up becoming a great player at Boise State, but talking about you just were talking about leveling up, where here it happens again. You're a great college player, but then all of a sudden the NFL draft happens and you end up going undrafted. And we've had a number of guests on the podcast who went undrafted, but made their way to the NFL. And so I was just wondering, you wrote a really powerful letter when you ended up retiring, that mentioned, the help that you got from Rob Ryan, I believe, back at the beginning of your transition to the NFL. But can you just take us back there? I mean, were you excited to go undrafted? Were you nervous? Did how did you feel about your prospects to make the NFL, and what was draft day like? If you can take us back there.
Yeah. So again, I have to go back a little bit, a couple of years of Boise State. They give the and so I had the same mentality at Boise State. The NFL wasn't really a goal, because I didn't really think it was like a possibility. I think my sophomore year was the first time Boise State was ever ranked. In my last 3 years there, there was like a sense at Boise State at the time that we're going to get there. Like we feel like we have the talent and we have to break through. Nobody believes in us, but we can break through. But still, the stigma at Boise State at the time was they have great coaching, mediocre players. Like they because they have great coaches who have trick plays and they're gonna be well coached, right? And even as a player, you're like, wow, I think I'm good, but nobody else is getting drafted really. Quick Michael, who's one of my friends, he was a senior when I was a sophomore. His freshman year, he was defensive player of the year. His senior year, he was defensive player of the year. He was first team all Western Athletic Conference all 4 years. No off the field problems. Not super big, but not like an undersized safety. Had pretty good measurables. He was undrafted. So,
even Kellen Moore, younger than you, Boise State went undrafted as well and had a pretty prolific college career.
No, Kellen Moore was older than me. Yeah, he had a prolific. Yeah, but I think by the time Kellen Moore was there, the tide had shifted. I think that there was more confidence because you had success like Quentin Michael. He was 03 draft. He ended up playing 11 years in NFL.
Yeah.
And he was an undrafted player.
Right.
Someone that achieved that level of success in college football is usually they're going to get drafted. But my senior year, going to my senior year, after we played TCU, we played the NFL bowl game my junior year. That was the first time I thought about the NFL. I was like, I think I might be good enough because I know there's some NFL players, and I had a really good game. I knew there were some NFL players for TCU, so that was the first time I thought about it. Then my fifth game against SMU, I caught an interception, and the tight end fell on me. I broke my collarbone, and so that I knew that was. And that was the first time I was like, that can't be it. I don't want to end my football career with a broken collarbone. And so that was the first time like, all right, I'm thinking about the NFL. And so going into the draft, I kind of knew that, well, I missed like pretty much my whole senior year, the second half of the season. And it was still Boise State. I had played corner and I had played safety, but obviously I was too small for safety. So going into the draft, I knew that I was going to be a late draft pick or undrafted player. And I remember being at my friend Gerald Alexander's house, who ended up playing in the NFL. He's actually the coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers now, the defensive back there. And I was at his house. I was on his couch, just in his apartment. It's not like he owned it or anything. It was just college. And I remember my agent was talking to me, but it's like Atlanta, the Giants, and Oakland. And he was like, look, they drafted a corner in the first and second round, but they don't have a punt returner and they don't have a kick returner. And so you're really going to get a chance to do that. And so if you do and you perform well and you can show that you're capable at corner, he's like, I think you have a good chance of making the team. So going into training camp, I mean, it was for a Boise State guy at the time, it was like, this is a dream, but you really don't see it as like a feasible, even though I like believed in myself. And maybe, these people are very smart. They take their time, they study the players, and I'm undrafted for a reason. sort of. But I remember the first mini camp that we had, the rookie mini camp, we started doing drills, and I was like, I felt that I was the best guy that they had. And I felt that I was better than all the other rookies. And that's when I told myself, that was for the first time in my life, I was like, I can do this. I can do this. And I just continued to perform really well. But it was very difficult because everyone viewed me as subpar. So when I would do something well, it was like, oh, he just kind of got lucky. Right? It was like, oh, that's just lucky. There was like this major stigma that was very frustrating, that it was like, I'm going to have to play well so consistently. And I'm really going to have to limit my mistakes, because if I make a few mistakes, it's like, oh, yeah, he is who we thought we were. And so very a tough road mentally overcoming that to ended up making the team. But I remember one practice, another undrafted guy who was on the practice squad, he was a tight end. I remember his nickname. I don't remember his real name, but he's like, Chris, he's like, look, he's like, your good days have to be great days, and your bad days have to be good days. You can't have bad days. And it's like, it is what it is. And I remember I went back to my hotel room after that. Yeah, it was profound. And I remember I went back to my hotel room. I was like, I can spend time talking to my agent about how unfair this is, how I'll make more plays than all the other corners that they drafted. And when they make good plays, it's like, oh, they're building up their confidence. Everyone's talking about them. And I just do one thing that's kind of, and they're yelling at me and looking at me like I'm the worst player in the world. But I just accepted where I was at. I was like, I can't do anything. I can't use this as an excuse. Like, oh, well, yeah, they didn't treat me fairly. And then I just kind of used that as fuel. And then halfway through training camp, I had earned the respect from everyone. So going into the final 2 weeks of the training camp, it was like, it feels weird saying that, like I knew I'd make the team. Because I was like, if I don't make the team, if I don't make the team, nobody deserves to make the team. Be here, like, and I'm not saying that as because I'm not into false modesty, and I don't like to embellish anything either. But I really felt like my best training camps were my rookie year, 2010, and my last training camp of 2013.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I think it was this laser focus that, hey, you not going to use this as an excuse. If you make it, you make it.
Right.
So in some sense, it was a little freeing in a sense because I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. So it's like, I'm going to give this my all and I'm not going to hold back at all. Then if it doesn't work out, then I'll just go be a lawyer.
Wow.
Well, I mean, it's such an incredible story that, you know, even when you're at an NFL training camp, there's still people doubting you. There's still people who you have to prove yourself to day after day after day. And I think that there's a lesson there too, Chris. I mean, it sounds like you had to do that in high school. You had to do that in college. And here you are doing it again in the NFL, which I think it really speaks to your resilience. But what's interesting to me is then you end up, I mean, I want to hear about what it was like to actually then make the team and be in the NFL. And here you are, you're on an NFL roster, you're on the Raiders. I think you're actually still the Raiders' all-time leading kick returner. And also you're playing on the defensive side of the ball. You have like 100-yard interception return on Ben Roethlisberger. But that you didn't end up a lifelong Raider. And so I'm just curious, like, what was it like when you got into the NFL, and what was it like to, when you were going year to year earlier in your career? Did you feel like I'm set, I'm established, like this is it? Or did you still have that chip on your shoulder where you felt like you still had to prove yourself?
Yeah, I didn't have any chip on. No, I would say that I never felt comfortable until my 7th year.
Wow.
It was always like this, a monkey on my back. Like I felt like the other shoe was going to drop.
Wow.
Because it was like I made the team, but it was still like, well, he could be a good returner, but like a starter in the NFL, like he had a great camp, but he's still undersized. He was still undrafted, and especially for the cornerback position, like sometimes like you can be undrafted and be like an offensive lineman, but I'm not sure what the stats are with this, but I would bet money that it's very hard to be undrafted and be a starting cornerback. Like it's happened before, but it doesn't.
And at 5'10", 5'11", right?
Yes. I mean, it might be, especially if it's not a situation like, well, this guy fell because he had these charges and nobody. Sure.
Yeah, right.
So it wasn't one of those situations. And when I was in Oakland, and that's why I give Rob Ryan and Chuck Pagano a lot of credit, because they really went that for me, because I think they felt like I should have been playing defense earlier. But Al Davis ran the show. So, and Al Davis is the offensive coordinator and the defensive coordinator. So Al Davis, sometimes I don't like these zone blitzes. I don't like this zone. No, we have to play man to man. Like we would actually come in the practice, and Rob Ryan would say, we can't run these plays because Al Davis doesn't like that. He wants to play more man to man. So that's
that.
Yeah. It was, I could write a book with Al Davis stories. Even though I do have a lot of respect for him.
He's such a historic figure, in terms of the story of the NFL. It's just crazy wrapping my head around what you're saying, because I think about him as, one of the forefathers of the NFL, not as someone who was in your active playing career calling the shots in terms of the play calling as the team.
Yes. And I think what happened, kind of time passed him by. In a sense, I mean, he was very revolutionary. Especially when it comes to like, I just want to hire the best and play the best. I don't care what color they are.
Right.
Whatever. And he was very revolutionary when it comes to that aspect. So I have the utmost respect for him. Even when I was there, when he was doing stuff that was detrimental to my career, I still like, well, that's just him and his mindset. But his thing was like, he loved players. He hated coaches. So players, that was his philosophy. So that's why in 3 years in Oakland, we had 3 new head coaches every year, because it was just the players. It was like this the coach's fault.
Yeah,
I remember one game. I think I forget who we played, but it was my second year, and I had a really good game. I was playing nickelback. I came in at nickel, and Chuck Pagano, like before the first meeting on Wednesday, he came and pulled me in the hall. He said, "Hey, Chris, I hate to say this, but you're not going to be up a nickel this week, even though you played phenomenally. Al Davis just wants the fastest corners on the field for this game. So you can't.
What? I mean,
Yeah.
Chris, like just fans at home, sometimes we would joke because the Raiders would, draft somebody in the first round because he was so fast. But it was sort of like, well, is he the best player that they could have drafted? But hearing you, I mean, as Gevin said, I mean, Al Davis, the just win baby Raiders are such a legend still to this day. But like, the fact that this is the case and that like, you are like one of the best players on the field and it's like, no, you can't play in this game. That's just so crazy.
Yeah, it was just so crazy. So there was always that pressure like, hey, the second I start slipping up, and the NFL is kind of like that anyway because there's less contracts in comparison to the other sports. But especially with me, I knew like I wasn't an Al Davis guy. I was only on the team really because the coaches, Chuck Pagano, Rob Ryan, they went to bat for me. And it was like, and I was playing so well and so consistently, like he really didn't have an excuse like, I'll give these coaches the benefit of the doubt and keep Chris. And so it was very hard mindset for me. And I even remember this, Lane Kiffin came in 2007 and Kiffin was all about competing. He had like the Pete Carroll model. So every practice,
USC,
every practice, the next day during the summer, we would watch like one-on-ones. And Lane Kiffin would be like, "Oh, so-and-so is killing this corner, or look at this play." Da, da, da. Like he was trying to get us like to be competitive.
Yeah.
And I was always making plays. But it was like, and he does it again. Chris Carr, another, I don't know. He just keeps doing it. We don't know, but he just keeps making plays. And I remember Nnamdi Asomugha. I was like,
Nnamdi Asomugha.
Yeah, right. One of the greatest cornerbacks in that era. Yeah.
Turned actor.
And Nnamdi's like, when can you just be good? I'm like, what do I have to do? I can just be good. Like,
that's hilarious.
Like, we don't know. Like, I had never played well before. Like, how is he doing this? He's small. He was and it's like after 3 years, you still had that stigma, right? And so it was very difficult when it comes to that because by that time, I had the confidence that I had watched enough film and seen enough players to know, like, I'm going to believe my lying eyes. Like, I felt like I'm better than like 90% of the corners and like that, like in my mind, like, I knew it, like in my heart of hearts, I believed that. And so it's like, I don't want to just be a punt return, kick returner. And I knew when it comes to having a long career in the NFL, you're going to have to bring more to the table than just that, unless you're like a Devin Hester, right? Like you're so phenomenal, it's not going to matter. So when Tennessee offered me the contract, it was more so like, hey, like you're going to be a great returner for us, etc. But it was also my mindset was like, hey, I got to be prepared because when I go in there on defense, I have to play well. And fortunately, I did play very well when I did have a couple of starts in Tennessee. And then Chuck was the person that told the Ravens, like, hey, like, yeah, he had a great returner because I think I was Pro Bowl alternative in 2008. But Chuck Pagano was like, hey, we need to bring this guy over because he can play corner too. He's just not a returner. And so that's why I always love Chuck and Pagano and Rob Ryan. They're my favorites because first of all, they taught me so much, right? And second of all, they kind of put their careers on the line sometimes because if I wouldn't have panned out in certain times in my career, they probably would have been blamed for me. Hey, like you brought this here or he can't even play, right? He has 2 left feet. Like, no, like we're going to fire you too with him.
I mean, it's just so hard to believe that, despite, as you say, despite everything that you're doing on the field, it's not enough, Chris. It's not. No, yeah. How is this possible? Well, it's been 3 seasons now. He's been so good. No, but maybe it's just a fluke. But it's funny. I mean, one of the things I want to get into as well is, you go from the Raiders to the Titans, and that you show out, have an incredible season there. Then you end up with the Ravens, and so I think you end up with them in 2009. And I guess I have some questions about that, just because here you are. I'm a Patriots fan, as I told you, and that rivalry and that era, when the Patriots had Tom Brady and Randy Moss and Wes Welker, and the Steelers had Big Ben and so many other great players, and then the Ravens, you had Joe Flacco at quarterback, you had and a defense just stacked with some of the greatest defensive players in the history of the NFL. What was it like? What was it like joining a defense that was that that had that much talent on it, and deciding? I mean, here you had a chance to really prove yourself, including even against the Patriots and a lot of other teams in the playoffs. Like, what was that like for you? What was that? Did that feel different than being with the Raiders or the Titans, who were good when you were there? What was it like to be a part of that rivalry and that franchise?
No, it was great. It was a dream. Like, from the outside looking in, I was like, how cool would it be to play for the Ravens? Just everything about it. I just went Ed Reed and Ray Lewis and the whole mystique in the 2000 Super Bowl. And they were known as for their defense, right?
Yeah, right.
And that's
Terrell Suggs,
Terrell Suggs, Haloti Ngata, and everything about the Ravens was attractive for me as a player. Like, hey, one day that would be great. I didn't think it was going to happen when I was in Oakland, but it's like,
sure,
hey,
right.
If I ever get that opportunity, right? And it's funny you mentioned that in New England. I took a visit to New England. So it really came down to Pittsburgh, New England, and Boston, right?
Don't tell me this. Tell me this.
Yeah, so I met with Belichick, and we had a good meeting. I remember he was quizzing me on football. We were talking football.
Was Robert Kraft in the room? Was Robert Kraft in the room too?
Nothing to do with it.
No, I don't think the owner was
right.
deciding who would play fully in New England in those days.
And then, but I think New England, I think it was like strategic. I think because they had been known for like calling players up for visits to make other teams nervous to like other teams.
The ante, yeah.
Because they ultimately didn't offer me a contract. Pittsburgh, I had a good trip. I loved Mike Tomlin. He was a great guy. But I got a sense from some of the other coaches, they were like, "Oh, well, if you come, you come. But we're gonna be great because we're great."
Right. You felt like Baltimore really wanted you.
Yeah, whereas Baltimore really wanted me, and really it would have taken a lot more money for me to go to Pittsburgh. A lot more money, because I knew with Chuck being there, I knew that I was comfortable with him. He believed in me, and it's like the best players of all time. So I'm like, of course I'm gonna go to Baltimore. So yeah, I think I had a shoulder surgery right after the season, because I'd been playing with a torn labrum and some bone chips off my left shoulder, from like the end of the 2007 season. So after my season with the Titans, I had shoulder surgery. So when I signed with Baltimore, I was in a sling. And so that was tough going through that, because I'm rehabbing and they're going to practice and they're great. And like, I want to get established. I want to show like, hey, I could play deep, et cetera, right? But Fabian Washington was there too. So I think having him there, that was favorable for me because we were good friends. He was the corner that was drafted in the first round in Oakland my rookie year too as well. And so he always respected me. And I mean, I love that guy too. Fabian was just a very, very kind-hearted person, very good player. But I think the players kind of respected me from Chuck and Fabian talking about me. So it wasn't kind of like, oh, who's this guy in a sling? And he's a returner, but he's going to play corner for us too. But it was difficult getting back into playing shape too, because you just become so weak once you have a shoulder surgery like that. And being a guy who's just like not very naturally strong, you're like, I really need to lift and like, do you have a full off season? But the second half of the season, some players got hurt. And then I went in, I played very well. And then I played very well during our 2 playoff games. And so I was going into 2010 as a starter. And like, for me, like, okay, this is my chance. Finally, in my head, I've been saying, you're a starter. You're one of the best corners in the NFL. This is your chance. Like, nobody to blame. But there was still this sense I felt like with Baltimore, like, I'm not sure, because they went and they traded for Josh Wilson, a cornerback, Seattle Seahawks, to come in. And I kind of felt like it was a situation like, oh, if Chris slips up, he's not the player that we thought he was, like Josh
Yeah.
So there was always a cloud over me, and there was no like words of assurance, like, yeah, you're the guy.
Right.
And so but I was really focused, and that was one of my best training camps going the season. So me and Fabian were the people that were the starters at the beginning of the season. Unfortunately, Fabian had
he got hurt.
Yeah, well, in 2010, Fabian had some two so-so games that year. And they benched him and brought Josh Wilson in. And that's what did it. But I started all those games, and started the playoff games. So I ended up playing 18 games that season. By far my best season. I think some of my best plays, in that year were not even interceptions or plays you would never see on highlight tapes. But it was kind of like the culmination of like everything. And I was like telling my kids about like Malcolm Gladwell, like Outliers to 10,000 Hours, which is usually like 10 years. And that was like my 10th year playing corner. That was 4 years at Boise State. Then my 6th year.
Oh,
wow. And that was like the peak of everything.
A lot of NFL players don't even make it that long in the league.
Yeah. And so it was good. And and when it comes, and so after that year, because I had signed a 2-year contract, and so I knew it was like, okay, I'm going to want to re-sign. I ended up re-signing a 4-year contract with them. And I think that was the first time going into the 2011 season where I felt like I don't have that same monkey on my back that I've had for 7 years or 11 years. But on the other hand, it was a relief. But on the other hand, if I'm being completely honest with myself, even though I trained the same way, and I don't think it was like a conscious thing, sometimes I wonder, like, not having that, like, did I let up mentally a little bit or something? Because I go into 2011, that was the first time I missed a game. I had never missed a game before. And I had a lot of injuries. And I'm not sure if that had to do with my preparation. I would like to say no, like there's no hard evidence that suggests that, but there is something about like your mindset at the beginning when you're hungry and going through things, like I think sometimes can be an edge. It's like a lot of times when they talk about musicians, like their best usually is like at the beginning, right? Like Prince's first couple albums, like, like when you're in that period, then you look at Prince like in the 1990s and 2000s, like it's not the same. It's just very hard to maintain that level of like intensity. So I think I might have lost that a little bit, just to be honest. I would like to say like, hey, I just got injured and da 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 da, but because to me, like I finally proved, and that was so much to me. Maybe if my goal is to be a perennial starter and for years and years and show this. But then again, at that point, my mindset was not like, oh, I want to play in the NFL forever. It was like, I want to have a solid career. Obviously, I want to set myself up that I don't have to work in, but I want to be an attorney. That's my goal.
That's actually what I wanted to ask about next. I think you're being hard on yourself. I hear what you're saying. You had these injuries in the 2011 season, your first time missing a game, like you said. Then you went sort of from team to team, a little bit in Minnesota, then to the Chargers, the Saints, where you ended your career. But even though, as you're describing, this was sort of the tail end of your career, you were still showing up for the team you were playing for in clutch moments. There's still plays on your highlight reel from your year with the Saints. There was this beautiful pick you had of Ryan Tannehill, just as one example, and that was absolutely electric. So I don't know. I think give yourself a little bit more credit. We can't get into your head, but just looking at your tape from the last few years of your career, it doesn't look, at least as a fan, like you let off the gas at all. And so can you talk just a little bit more about that and maybe just unpack a little bit more what you think you were feeling, and to the extent that you clearly did keep going during those last few years, what was it that motivated you to keep showing up every single play, every single drive that you were on the field?
Yeah, so leaving, once I knew after the 2011 season, the young guys had gone in there. Ladarius Webb had played well. Kerry Williams had played great. Love those guys. And I knew that my second year on my contract, I was scheduled to get paid a lot of money. And the young guys proved themselves. I missed like half the season. I'm like, I'm going to get released up. Like I know
right.
So when Ozzie Newsome brought me in, we just like he didn't have to say anything. We just chatted. I just thanked him for everything. Like,
Wow.
just the best year of my life here being
Wow.
in Baltimore. But going to Minnesota right after that, I was optimistic, but I don't think I was ready mentally, like how different it was going to be. Because I felt like I was taking a step backwards in that the coaching and the philosophy and the whole program at Baltimore, I just felt was top notch. I felt like Minnesota was a notch below that. And that's very difficult.
Yeah.
That's a very hard thing when you're hearing coaches coach things a certain way and you just kind of like, that's not going to work. That's not, like it's doing like, whereas like in Baltimore, like we'd had like the ability to be like, hey, Chuck, like against this game, we can't run that. That's not going to work. Right. Or different things. And
he was receptive to that.
Yeah. And so I went to Minnesota, having those changes, it was very hard for me. And I think I got negative in the sense that instead of just like accepting it, like, hey, it's just different. And obviously it's not going to be as good as Baltimore. Like,
yeah,
that's the NFL. Like, not everyone's going to have as good a program as New England or Baltimore, or Pittsburgh. That's just the way it is. And I remember in that training camp, I didn't have one play. Like, I'm like, I haven't made a play all training camp. I haven't had a pass breakup, interception. And like, usually, like, I always, like, and I'm thinking, like, was it just like my mindset? That I had there, I was like, man, I just feel like I'm in a funk. Like, I haven't done, it wasn't like I was playing terribly, but it's just like, even just every practice that I ever had, like, I would at least make one play.
Yeah.
And like, I didn't make any plays. And so getting released was, it was very hard for me. Like, still to this day, like, I don't even like being in the airport in Minnesota. Like,
wow.
Like,
you're like, no layovers in Minneapolis.
I associate Minnesota with like failure. Like,
wow.
And like,
wow.
You're like, it's really strange, but like, I'm really prideful on that. And it was, and it was like the first time, like, I felt like I failed. Like, I had the opportunity.
Wow.
Like, it didn't go well. And then North Turner called us up. I went to San Diego, and the switch was flipped again. Okay, so it's like, I'm good. I'm back into this. It was difficult in that you have, at that point, I was kind of viewed as like the veteran guy that's going to come in and make some plays, but we want to build the young guys. We want this guy to build. And I'm always going to be helpful to the young guys, etc. But it was difficult in the sense that when you're watching players that you feel in your heart of hearts you're better than, but their potential, right? The future, they want them to play, to get that experience because they know in the long run and for like, these are the people that are going to be playing. So, but at that point, it was kind of like, well, you kind of just have to accept it, that. And I didn't really get a chance to play too much in San Diego. So at this point, I was like, well, I want to end on a good note. And going into 2013, I was like, okay, this is going to be the last. Because I kind of felt, and at that point, I had some body issues. Like, I just felt like I just little things here and there that just, I wasn't healing as fast. And part of it, I think, was mostly I did a lot of heavy lifting from like the age of 14 to like, like we did a lot of which was great in the sense, but I think it could be detrimental to train harder. And that's what Tom Brady did. I think his philosophy when he changed, like, you can't do the same things, you're going to break down, right? And so I think that was me. But I didn't have a lot of leeway when it comes to, like, you have to do the program that they want you to do. But that's a whole nother story about it should be more individualized. I'm not sure if it's like that now, but going into 2013, I was like, okay, this is good. This is it. I have to end on a great note. So my 2013 training camp was phenomenal. Like, it was making plays all the time. I was back with Rob Ryan in New Orleans. And then we get down to the last cuts, and Sean Payton, I remember, he brought me in. He was like, you played phenomenal, but, it's a numbers game. We had these younger guys, and right. So I got released, but then someone got injured like 2 weeks later. Then I came and played for the rest of the year. And so that, I think that was having the failure in Minnesota kind of flipped the script for me. I had to accept where I was at, and that I took more of the mentality like, hey, sometimes if you don't want, what's the saying? If you don't like what people are saying about you, change the story. You gotta, yeah. Like, so it was like, hey, you have that power. It's kind of taking the power back, and it's like, hey, you had to sit back, kind of like what you did previously earlier in your career, and you get a chance to play. You need to play well, and then you might get a chance to start like you did in Baltimore.
Yeah. No bad days.
Yeah. So I think, that was my last 3 years were interesting in that. But yeah, Minnesota still, I'm like, I don't even want to be in the airport.
No, you can tell.
Yeah.
Well, look, I mean, I know we want to get
in your household,
right? Yeah, you can talk about it. No, but it's fun. I know we want to ask you some other questions about your legal career, but last questions, just quickly on the NFL. I have to know, what was it like intercepting Tom Brady? And also, you played with some of the greatest quarterbacks, certainly in this era in the NFL, right? You played with Joe Flacco, you played with Drew Brees, you played with Phil Rivers, and others. And of that group, I would just want to know, who, you could just pick one of those guys who's the go-to quarterback for you. So those are my questions. What's it like to intercept Tom Brady, and who's the best quarterback you feel like you might have ever played with?
Played with, I would probably say Drew Brees. I think the best quarterbacks I've seen play, on watching film, fear.
Peyton Manning.
Not like fear, but like Peyton and Aaron Rodgers.
Let's go.
Peyton and
really?
The sheriff.
Yeah, because you're watching him scramble, elusive, and making these throws. And so Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning, you're just like, man, we're gonna really have to come correct. And Tom Brady was like that too. But it was a little different in that the Colts pretty much lined up the same way every time. They had Reggie Wayne on the right, they had Marvin Harris on the left, they had Dallas Jack, and they lined up, no huddle, he's barking out orders. Yeah. And so it's very hard. It was easy that week for preparation because you can watch all the film you're not getting the best tendencies.
Right.
You're really not. Whereas at least with New England, their system was so complex, and talking to people who played in it, a lot of players like Chad Johnson, I heard saying he struggled because he could just not grasp the offense.
Right, exactly.
Right. And I think by the time I was playing against New England, my understanding of football and being able to study film, I felt like I can get keys against Tom Brady. So I think that was the difference between him and Peyton Manning. So I think skill level, he was right up there. But as far as watching film, you don't want to play against it was the Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers were that was the pinnacle.
Well, I know Bill Belichick, there's a clip of him talking about the best play he ever saw made in the NFL, and it was Ed Reed picking off Peyton Manning. I don't remember what year it was, but Ed Reed just sat down and out Peyton and knew exactly when he pumped fake to the left, went right, he was coming back to the left.
Oh, yeah.
Ed Reed came across the field, jumped in front, I think it was Reggie, and picked that ball off. It was incredible. Yeah. But I was born in the so I'm a big Peyton Manning fan. I got to shut up about him.
Yeah.
But one thing, and I'll tell about the Peyton Manning pick too here in a second. But what I like to say about Ed Reed, because sometimes I think he doesn't get as much credit. He, to me, is the best football player I've ever seen. He was the only person that left me speechless. What happened? Wow. How did he do that? It was the only. I mean, there was probably 3 plays where he did that, where I just could not believe it. I mean, it's he had that Messi factor, Messi, and I think in soccer, he made that shouldn't be possible. That's like a video game.
Right?
How did he? Right? And it's I remember we're playing Ed Reed. We're playing man-to-man. It was a blitz. It was, he was 20 yards deep as safety, right? He's just deep, cover 1, 3rd and 3. He sprints at the snap of the ball and picks off the slant and jogs to the end zone. And so I remember I was on the slot receiver. All of a sudden, I hear everyone in the stands, cheering. I was like, what happened? Then I see him jogging in end zone. I was like, he was 20 yards. What? I don't even understand. like,
It's just sensory perception.
And then you go back and you watch the film and you're just like, that's a play nobody's ever seen before. Nobody's at the time. And I don't think anybody's seen since. And that's why I always like separate him like Troy Polamalu, because like Ed Reed plays that you didn't think were possible. And whenever he would do something like you said about the greatest play he ever saw a safety make, he would never
the greatest play ever he ever saw in the NFL.
He would never, when he would get quote unquote gamble, like he never got burnt on it. Like when he would just leave somebody, and he would always catch the ball.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, there's a clip in the 2009 documentary about Belichick, The Football Life, where he and Brady are just speechless. They just are watching film of Ed Reed before they played you guys, and you can just see the two of them. They just keep playing it, and they're like, Ed Reed. They're like, every time you think you know where he is, he gets so low that you can't see him. Yeah. You don't know where he is, and then he pops up out. I mean, it's the respect that those two had for him just demonstrated, I think, exactly what you're talking about, Chris.
Yeah. But Tom Brady, it was because I had one interception against him in the 2010 playoffs.
Wild card game.
Yeah, in the wild card. And that felt good, but that game was kind of like we just got off to a great start, and it was just
it was a pig party, and everyone was invited.
Well, in the second game, I remember we had this one coverage when New England would check to empty, no running backs, anybody in the backfield, that we were going to check our coverage. So we disguised it like we were like cover zero. We're bringing it the house and everybody's the man. And this play is actually supposed to be free safety, right? And I didn't go back to free safety until the last second, and I kind of felt like I fooled him. So it was a very gratifying. It was a very gratifying pick that game. And I remember later on that game, I think they designed a play just for me. And because my whole thing was like, and Suggs would always say this, like Chris Carr is unscreenable. You can't run these wide receiver screens against him. He's going to jump them all the time. Even if you window dress them, he's going to do it. And England did like the window dressing, and they went in their look. I was like, oh, I'm going to jump this screen. And it was a screen and go, and they got like 15 yards. And I was like, I was just thinking, like, touche. I was like, you got some thinkers over there in New England.
You've been watching film. Yeah, exactly. But, so I guess, transitioning out of the NFL, I mean, obviously, believe it or not, you're actually, I think the third player turned lawyer, NFL player turned lawyer that we've had on Lowlights. And, obviously each of you had a very different path to the law. And you just mentioned like, you knew that you were probably going to be an attorney. So, tell us a little bit about that. Like, what inspired you to follow that path and know that was going to be a path for you?
Yes. So it was my sophomore year at Boise State. I took constitutional law, and our professor was Todd Lochner. And I just remember, I can't recall like exactly like what article in the Constitution we're addressing at these times, but I remember he would take like let's say a more of a like a Scalia approach to like, where you
original text,
text, right? And he would just go and he like went in there and he just like challenged everyone, and he would just kill everyone. And then the next day, he'd go in and take the other position and then kill everyone. Right. And I remember it was like the first time, I was like, oh man, like after the first time, it's just like my thinking was just like blown, because it was showing like sometimes when you really have to dig deep into issues, they're a lot more complex than they originally like superficially like seem, And I remember being in that class, and I enjoyed it more than sports. And that was the first time in my life.
Wow.
Because I think maybe sports was like a comfort for me, because my sisters, I play Barbies with them, and we do dance to Michael Jackson videos. We did this stuff, but like as we got older, like it was more like they weren't into what I was into. And I didn't have a whole bunch of books at my home. Right. We didn't. And so it was like intellectual. So I think sports was really like my outlet. And I had done well in school just because I think I was smart, but I didn't really I wasn't intellectually curious. And I wasn't really trying to push myself intellectually. But there was a switch that flipped, I think going into my sophomore year, I was like, look, in 3 years, you're going to be on the street and nobody's going to care that you play football. And because at that time, I was like, I'm not going to play in the NFL. Right. So I think I was primed. I was ready for like something more. And then when I took that class, I was like, that's it. I want to be an attorney. I'm like, that's what I want to do. And so it was like, I'm going to play football as long as possible. And if I make it, I make it. Unfortunately, I was fortunate to play 9 years. But I knew that's what I really wanted to do with my life. And unfortunately, going to law school, and I could tell the story later, but my interest in immigration like started in 2012. And so once I got to law school, I knew 2013 was going to be my last year. I was like, how can I marry these interests like immigration and law? I'm going to see how I like it.
Wow. Well, Chris, I mean, for those who don't know, a big part of your legal practice today, you fulfilled what you were hoping to do. You're an immigration lawyer now. And a lot of your work does include representing people like asylum seekers and, helping defend those who fled some pretty terrible situations in their home countries to win the legal right to stay here. So we just talked a little bit about the highs that you experienced as an NFL player. So I'm curious, how do some of the legal wins that you achieved through your legal practice today compare to some of those football wins you experienced in the league? And then because this is Lowlights after all, what about when things go the other way and you lose a case and your client's life is directly impacted by that? How does a loss like that compare to some of the losses that you experienced during your playing days?
I think, and I don't want to like look at my clients like I'm like their parent or their children, but I kind of feel like, and I'm not sure if you two have any children, but there's just a certain amount of pride and like fulfillment you have when you see your children happy. Like your whole life, like you accomplish something and you feel great, and it's like this big high and all the attention's on you. But like to see your child really truly happy, like you really feel like satisfied, right? So like having someone that you really feel like you helped out and you given them hope, and they deserve it, and they're great people, and they went through hell and back to be here. Like it's a very satisfying feeling, and it's not, and it's a very, and maybe it's not like this for all immigration attorneys, because I do think, that's another topic. I think some immigration attorneys like get off like, oh, look at me, I'm Superman type of thing. But it's really
like they're the savior.
Yeah, like savior. Like for me, it's like it's really like a big feeling. Like I'm just very happy for them. Like not my children, but I was like, that was justice for them, right? So it's a very, very gratifying feeling. Losing a case in that sense, it's very tough, especially if you feel like an injustice occurred. I had one case where we took to the Fourth Circuit. It involved a due process argument because we felt like the judge was biased against the client, right? And being in a situation when you're actually in the courtroom and you feel like, all right, you can be a judge, you can have your own philosophy, whatever. You can be more strict, or you can be more conservative, or you can, whatever your viewpoint is, like, but when you feel like someone's going outside the bounds of the law and is like not being fair and is like badgering someone who's gone through, has PTSD or something, like that's tough mentally sometimes, right? Right. That can be very tough. But fortunately, we have an appellate system, right? You can appeal. So it's one of those situations where there's always like hope there. I think football has helped me in that you're going to have to really hold your emotions together and think about the next play, the next game. Like you could have played terrible, and it's like, but like you have something else coming up, you need to help out, right? You need to focus. And so I really think when it comes to some of those tougher cases, football has helped me out when it comes to just thinking about the task at hand. And so there's been a couple of times in my, God, it's been almost 8 years now where I've been an attorney in certain cases where it's, oh man, like even talking about it is hard. Like there's three cases I have where I talk about them, and I'll tear up. But usually it's a situation in which like, and it's weird, like someone telling me these facts and I'm looking at it just kind of like how a doctor is hearing about like somebody's ailment. It's very clinical. Like how, okay, where are the facts? How can I help out? And that's my mindset. And I think I do have that ability. So I think, a lot of times it's not that difficult. And also too, I'm in a sense when it comes to keeping my emotions intact. And I do different types of cases too. So sometimes if you're doing something that's outside of the removal proceedings context, it can be very gratifying. It's less high stakes. You're just making sure that you're paying close attention to the details, building a strong case. Whether that's a waiver for someone for a ground of inadmissibility or whether that's a sports visa, right? It's a lot more chill, a lot different in that sense. But yeah, definitely the removal proceeding stuff can be very intense, especially given the case. But I always say, like, when it comes to comparing football, I enjoy what I do now more than I enjoy the NFL. I would say that there's nothing compares to getting ready for a playoff game. Like that high, that feel, that excitement, like getting up and like you're about to get in the bus and the whole city is buzzing. Everyone's ready. You're about to step on the field like with your brothers and you're about to go to battle. Like that high, like that, nothing's going to compare to that. But when it comes to like day to day, like I'm interested. This is great. This fulfills me. What I'm doing now, I can honestly say I like better than the NFL.
Wow. I mean, as an attorney myself, I successfully represented somebody in an asylum proceeding earlier in my career. And to your point, Chris, that there's this special high that you get when, you have the opportunity to quote you, change the story basically, where, you have somebody, you have to do all this research. I mean, it's such an interesting mix, I think, of, storytelling and legal practice because the law is the law. And yet the facts matter so much. The circumstances matter so much. The telling your client's story in the most powerful way and assembling those facts, to your point, it's a little clinical in that you have to gather those facts and they all matter. But how you put those facts together, how you assemble your argument is so important in these cases. And that win that high that you get, that rush where you feel like you can finally help somebody and achieve something for them, it's an unforgettable feeling. So I just, it's such a fascinating practice and such an interesting way that you've decided to put your law degree to use.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just think of serendipity because like, if you would ask me in '08 or 2005, like, oh, you can be an immigration attorney, I'm like, why would I be an immigration attorney? Like, that wasn't even my mind. But I remember it was 2012. We're in the locker room in San Diego. Everyone's talking politics because it's an election year, right? And someone's like, hey, Chris, what do you think our immigration policy should be? And I just remember I sat there. I was like, I don't know. And like, because I had never really given it a serious thought. Like, I kind of had like a cursory like understanding of immigration in America. But then I remember I read Ethnic America by Thomas Sowell, and it's like not a political book. But it was just about 6 different ethnic groups that came to the United States in the late 19th century, early 20th century, and their experiences in their home country and how they managed their way in America. And then, like, it was almost like a romantic thing, like at that point, like, and I started reading more about immigration, the economics for it. Michael Humer, the philosopher at Colorado, he had the moral case for immigration really inspired me for immigration. And so it's like, then when I got to George Washington, I was like, okay, I want to make sure I get in the immigration clinic. And I loved it, doing that, especially in the DC area, because it's a diverse group of people. We have people from all over here. And then I was like, well, I guess I need to learn language. And so I learned Spanish. And so it opened up that whole world for me, And so, yeah, it's been great, especially at the firm that I'm at now. I always say, like, I feel like we're the Boise State of, of immigration. No, because like, I think we've had like over 40% growth like the past 3 years. Like, it's crazy. Now we have 3 offices and and at Boise State, because I know this, I'm not going to, snitch or say anything. Like, I knew like some dirty stuff went on in other programs. in the days where you couldn't pay players.
Right.
Like SMU in the
Right.
1980s, right? Like,
Yeah.
because they were going outside of the rules, right? Boise State didn't do any of that. It was like they were really fortunate and they got really good coaching and they really looked at talent differently and really got diamonds in the rough. And it was like this philosophy and it just slowly built. And you go, like when I was at Boise State, honestly, our weight room looked like a junior college. It was like as good as my high school.
Wow.
Like now the
Right.
facility is better than the Baltimore Ravens facility.
Right.
You know, and just like to see that, them to go from like practically a nobody to a perennial top 25.
Sure.
And they did it the right way. And
Yeah.
and now, and that's how I kind of feel like at my firm now is that you have people who it's not about egos. It's about working
Right.
hard. Yeah, it's about the law. We're here to help out each other and to help out our clients. And as a result, we've been growing and doing great work. And I had some trepidation coming to this firm too, because I worked at a smaller law firm before I came here in August of 2023. And I was like, you know, Dave, you hear lawyer stories like at the firm, you hear stories at bigger firms that are growing. But I was like, I haven't had any inclination like that with any attorney here. And so,
That's
yeah,
great.
it's definitely been crazy, as you can imagine, the past 8 years.
Oh, yeah.
In immigration. But it's,
that's an understatement.
Yeah. I feel like it's been a very satisfying and very interesting. It's constantly changing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, so it's been great.
Chris, so as you know, to pivot a little bit,
Yeah.
a big reason why Dave and I are doing this podcast is because we want to speak directly to young men who might be struggling, especially with their mental health. I think right now in sports, fortunately, we've seen the conversation really move toward destigmatizing issues of mental health. Players like A.J. Brown, for example, have been pretty outspoken about their own mental health struggles and, you know, how important it is to check in with yourself, with your teammates, with your friends, and really just changing the narrative there. I'm curious what it was like. You don't have to go too much in detail, but having been in the NFL, been in those locker rooms, and now doing really emotionally difficult work. I mean, I, as a law student, also did a little bit of immigration work during my 1L year, or my 2L year. And I know just how heavy that can be. And I felt like every time I left a room with a client who was opening up about some terrible experience they'd been through in their home country, it's like I needed to check in on myself. I needed to, you know, have a conversation with the other people in the clinic just to make sure we were all okay. So do you have advice then with these really difficult lines of work that you've been in on how young men out there should deal with their mental health and what they can do if they're struggling or they know someone else who might be struggling?
Yeah, so I think maybe possibly looking at mental health and talking about your emotions and showing your emotions and being honest viewing it as in a different light. And I'm going to get more concrete here in a second. So a lot of times us men, we think, okay, well, I can't cry. I can't do this. I don't want to talk about that. That's weak. Like I can't, like I have to show, right? Think about it like this. And it's absolutely true. If you don't want to accept something, you don't want to face something, right? You're being weak for not doing that. Like you holding back and not speaking about something, in a sense, that's not very a manly thing to do if you want to say manly or anything like that. But just as a human being, talking things through and being honest with yourself, because everyone's different, right? Some things are not going to affect other people as heavily as someone else. And so if you feel like you're in a situation just in life, whether that is sports or whether that's in school, or whether that's your home environment, I think being honest and talking to people and being vulnerable, that's like a sign of strength, right? Like, and I think, yeah, growing up, sometimes it's like, as men, you're just like, oh, shake it off. It's all right. You can be fine. Be tough. Get through it. Quick. Yeah, being man about it, being crying, right? And I think there's a distinction too between like feeling sorry for yourself and grief, right? Like, I think, and a Haruki Murakami book taught me that. Yeah, and I think that is a big distinction too. If you're like, oh well, me, the world's against me, like, oh, nobody's like seeing my problems or they're not taking this seriously. They don't know what I've been through, but that is a different thing, like, right? But if you have grief, you might have it forever, right? But that doesn't mean that you're weak, right? And it's like those type of things, like how you feel, like I might have lost my mother or I'm going through this, my struggles, like I feel like I'm not good enough. Like it's really good to talk to someone who you trust, and whether that's a friend or that could be a teammate. And I think a lot of times, men, as you two probably have found out too, a lot of other people have the same struggles, have the same worries, have the same fears.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not until you
I'm
actually,
never the only one.
yeah, you felt like, oh, like I thought everyone was just like fine, you know? 'Cause I was,
Yeah, right.
what elicits the biggest lies in life is, how are you doing, Dave?
How you doing?
Yeah,
No, 100%.
because in that
100%.
moment, if you're not doing fine, you go through all the things that aren't going well in your life and you swallow it and you say, good, everything's good.
Yeah, everything's good.
Yeah. But I think that in short is just viewing as differently. Like if you want to think about it, it's like, I need to be tough. Lying to yourself and holding things in because it's uncomfortable, like that's a sign of weakness, right? Being vulnerable and talking to people,
Just strength.
it's going to help you in that strength.
Absolutely.
And it's going to give you more confidence. You're going to feel more comfortable doing so because you're going to find out that, like we just said, that people are going through the same things that you're going through. And that's only going to help you overcome, right? Or at least make it more manageable for whatever you're going through in your life.
Yeah, I love that as advice. I mean, it's just, and especially coming from you, Chris, you know, somebody who has played in the NFL, had always been, somebody who's perceived to be, the manliest of men or whatever those descriptions typically are. But this different conception of vulnerability and the ways that are, you can truly demonstrate strength. I think is so important for so many young men to hear. And within that lesson, I hope people who are listening know this as well. It sounds like reading might have been a part of that journey for Chris as well. And there are so many thoughtful writers and authors who have written great books, and can help you think that through. So look, I mean, Chris, obviously we could talk to you forever. I think Gevin and I clearly both have a lot of questions we would love to ask you, and we would love to keep up more of your time. But we will not. We will move to the last lightning round questions that we ask all of our guests. And so I'll start with the first one here, which is favorite movie or TV show, and I guess for you we can expand it to book about. Maybe about sports, but it could also be something outside the world of sports. But whether it's because it's realistic or because you just love it, what's the go-to for you?
So which question am I answering first? So the movie.
So movie or TV show, you pick.
Okay, so my favorite show of all time is The Wire.
Great.
It's like
Baltimore, of course.
Yeah, and it's almost
of course.
it's almost cliche right now to say that. But
no,
I think
but it's just true. It's real.
It's just true. It's just hard. It's just hard to beat that. I think Game of Thrones is definitely up there too. It's hard to as well. But yeah, I would definitely say The Wire.
All right, great answer. David Simon's genius, and the actors. I mean, it's like filming real life. It's how I felt when I watched that show. It's just like it's like a documentary. Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
I always say I'm not judgeful. I'm not I don't really judge people. But like if somebody watched all 5 seasons of The Wire and they said they didn't like it, I would
red flag.
There's something wrong with this.
Oh, and I think that's one of the best openings too of any show ever. In the beginning of The Wire, that first scene when McNulty's asking the witness, like, why did you let him play in this guy play in the game if he stole the money every time and somebody ended up killing him? And he said, why did we let him play? Well, you got to. This is America, man. I just think like that one exchange is just so brilliant.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So second question. Music. So what's the music that you put on when you're feeling down? Or maybe it could be the music that gets you pumped up, before a game or now before a big case. But what's that music you go to?
Oh, so I apologize for a lot of people for this, but this has been my new love is jazz music. So for the past year, I've just been listening to a whole lot of jazz, old school jazz. So Miles Davis.
Oh yeah,
Art
Charlie
Blakey.
Parker.
Yeah, Charlie Parker. Art Blakey is my favorite, the jazz drummer. And so I just been really like, oh my God, my whole life. Like I almost went my whole life and never listened to jazz music. Like this is so cool. Lee Morgan, like I'm just it's so it's I'm fascinated by the culture, how it was developed. I think it's the most American thing that's been created.
Absolutely. Quintessential.
Yeah, quintessential. And I mean, Duke Ellington, I mean, just works and just like the work of art. It's Charles Mingus. And so, yeah, that's what I've been listening to. That's been my go-to for if I want to get pumped up, if I'm depressed, if anything, jazz has been my go-to the past year.
Oh, such a good answer.
Yeah.
And well, especially as a son of a dad who, before his career in academia, he was in jazz bands. I appreciate that answer very much.
Very cool.
All right. And then, food. Is there what for you, what's comfort food in that same way where whether you're feeling down, whether you're, thinking about a case or a game that you can turn to and is going to be there for you?
Oh, well, yeah. When I'm feeling down, anything unhealthy, I want some ice cream. Ice cream, I'm usually very cognizant of what I put in my body, right? I'm like, I want to be, can't have too much sugar, can't be too fat. I want to protect my teeth, I want to protect, my figure. But no, if I'm down, no, give me that, give me that ice cream. I want desserts. So that's
what's the flavor? What's the ice cream flavor that you go to?
Yeah, I mean, traditional vanilla, it's hard to beat that, but I like butter pecan. And everyone was crazy because since I was a kid, I liked butter pecan. They was like, that's a grandparent flavor.
Six. I mean, vanilla, butter pecan.
Yeah, but I was like, maybe I'm just old, but I liked butter pecan when I was 12.
No. It sounds like you just appreciate the classics, whether it's Miles Davis or butter pecan ice cream.
Chris, well, our time with you has unfortunately come to an end, but just want to thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a really, really fun one. I have such respect for you, Chris, just for what you did on the field and watching you play, during your time in the league, and for what you're doing now in the legal field.
Absolutely.
Especially at this moment in time, the work that you're doing is crucial. It's absolutely crucial. And so I want to thank you both for joining us today and also for what you're doing in this fight at this really critical moment in time. So I know our listeners are going to be blessed and uplifted by hearing all of the words of inspiration and wisdom that you had to share. And so just thank you again so much for being on.
No, thank you. I had a blast. I don't talk sports much, so it was good to talk.
You got to come back on. We'd love to have you on again.
I know.
Definitely. And best of luck with the podcast.
Hey, thank you.
You two, you're both very intelligent, so I'm sure you guys are going to keep improving it. It's already good, and best of luck.